I think encouraging mass university education and expecting people who are not suited to academic study because they hate it, they can't do it, they don't want to do it, they don't like it, they reach the limit at school, they struggle at school, expecting them to keep improving at maths or engineering or science or history or English or medicine or whatever they're doing, I think is actually consistent with the pre-Darwin biologist called Lamarck. His ideas about how plant and animal organs and body parts will evolve and develop over time is discredited and wrong. Lamarck's ideas say that if you keep working an organ, it develops characteristics, it gets bigger and stronger and more powerful. But Darwin came along and said this is wrong. You have to be born with you have to be born with lots of fast twitch, you're born with a clever brain. You can't just grow one. You can't just grow lots of fast twitch muscle if you don't have any for sprinting. You can't just grow lots of muscle to be an endurance runner if you don't have any in the first place. Darwin says you've got to be born with fast twitch, you've got to be born with endurance to be a long distance runner, you've got to be born with a mathematical brain, you've got to be born with a brain that's good at doing English language. So I think mass university education here is not working because I think it's actually Lamarckian for a lot of people. And a lot of people I think would be a lot happier if they were doing manual jobs, practical jobs. Or even whether it's becoming chefs, builders, I don't know, working with people, working television, film. There are lots of other jobs that hotels, airports. I'm just giving examples, but there are hundreds of jobs which do not involve having to go and do a degree. I should also point out that the reason why far few people went to university in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s and even back in the early 20th century is because the exams were actually much harder. I've compared the high grades I sat in 92 and 1990 ones my siblings did with modern ones from the last 10 or 15 years. Yeah, and the exams we sat 30 years ago were at least twice as hard as modern exams. I've compared papers. I dug out a 92 higher and 1990 higher maths and chemistry, and they have twice as many questions as the exam papers from the last 10 years. Okay? I think the doubling down started about 20 years in the millennium, but the exams from the 70s they kind of vary going back in time. I looked at 1940s and 50s O-levels, and they're actually quite short, but they're a combination of 4th year, 5th year and 6th year, and they even do stuff that's not taught at all anymore at school. And I listed exams, in fact, from 100 years ago, and which my grandparents would have sat, and they are something else. They are very hard. They're more like university. So the reason why far few people went to university during these 1990 and earlier, or during the 1990s and much earlier, is because the exams were harder, and probably degrees were harder. Degree grade inflation is a big, well-documented problem. There are a lot of the modern universities I think are giving out easier, thinner degrees, which I don't agree with. I think it's wrong to give out a thinner degree to one person and a harder degree to someone else. It devalues what university is supposed to mean. It means you're supposed to be a specialist in your subject. Anyway, yeah, I think that's the trouble. I think this is Lamarckian. It doesn't work. It's not how biology works. I have an issue with this, which I mentioned in my previous teaser, when I show lots of students studying and then I show lots of people at university and I show Darwin's image. In the 1960s, a lot of younger people don't realise this, only about 5% went to university. By the 1970s it was about 10%. These numbers are approximate, but it was basically far less than now. By the by the early 1990s, it was up to about 20%, okay? When I went in 1992, it was about 1992 was 20%, okay? The government since the late 1990s has basically pushed that up to 30 to 40%, with this idea that everybody somehow becomes better educated, cleverer, better skilled, even if a lot of people now going have actually reached the limit at school and struggled at school because at school they didn't have any interest, or they couldn't do school, or they hated school, or they didn't want to do school. Historically, during these periods, a lot more people went to apprenticeships, polytechnics, technical colleges, FE colleges. They went off and did non-academic training.